In this video, we're going to talk about how to stay calm when your world is crashing all around you. What if you're on your honeymoon and there's some strange law, and this is a true story, that your wife can't live with you because she's from another country? What if you're planning to get on a plane and they tell you you don't have the right paperwork, or your visa is not... This actually happened to a devotee. She didn't realize her visa was expired, or her passport was expiring in 3 days, or it had already expired. You know. How do you deal with that? And that's life. So I think there's only one answer to how to deal with that. There's no other way to deal with it than to accept it, because it just happened. It's not going to change. And the more and more you fight it, the more and more anxious you become and disturbed. Now, when these things happen to me, I always think, okay, change of plans. What does Krishna want? Why is this happening? Of course, it could have been my stupidity that it's happening, or some ignorance of something I should have known or should have taken precaution towards. But sometimes it just happens. It's beyond your control. There's nothing you could have done to know that this was going to happen or prevent it. And so what do you do in that situation? You have to go with it, and from that position, you think, okay, now what do we do? You know, there's a story that Satsrup Maharaj had taken dictation from Prabhupada, and the letter was, the check is enclosed. And so he forgot to send the check. And somehow or other, Prabhupada knew, so he asked him, you know the letter, did you send the check? And Satsrup Maharaj said, oh, Prabhupada, I forgot. He just remembered at that moment that he forgot. And Prabhupada said, so now what are you going to do? And Satsrup Maharaj said, I will send another letter with a check apologizing that I made this mistake. Prabhupada said, yes, do it. So Prabhupada's mood was, now what are you going to do? Not to be too concerned about what happened, but to be concerned about what you're going to do from this point forward. And that's really all you can do. Now what are we going to do? Now, a lot of devotees have told me in those situations, either they lose faith in Krishna, or they're stop chanting or stop praying, or and I always react in the opposite way. That's the time I need to chant more and pray more. So I find it interesting that sometimes these situations allow us to rise to a level of anxiety where we're not even peaceful enough to depend on the person for help, as who is the only person that can help us in that situation. But as you live life, you know some days are good and some days are not, and the bad always works itself out, and the good always doesn't last forever, and things come back to normal. And you have a good day, later in the day you get some bad news, you get some bad news tomorrow, later in the day you get some good news. That's how the world is. And that's why Krishna in the second chapter is saying to Arjuna, don't be so much pushed around by duality, because if you are, how are you going to be Krishna conscious? Because you'll be like a yo-yo. You'll be happy one moment, sad one moment. And if you're steady, then you're in the ideal position to be Krishna conscious. So it's just we have to learn how to accept, and now that this has happened, be forward thinking. Okay, what are we going to do? Because once you're solution-based, it tends to pacify you. When you see a way out of a situation, or at least you see that there's action to take, let's do everything we possibly can. That's all we can do. And so, what else can I say? Chant Hare Krishna, follow the 4 regular principles, read Prabhupada's books, of course, all these things. The beauty of Krishna consciousness is that Prabhupada has taught us how to deal with all of this. So if we lose it, quote unquote, when things like this happen, then the question is, what have we learned from Prabhupada? It seems like we haven't learned, isn't it? Like, that's the gift we have, is the knowledge and the consciousness we can develop that enables us to deal with all these calamities. So much so that Kunti was willing to have them, because Krishna would always show up when things were difficult. And that was her greatest pleasure, that Krishna would show up. So if Krishna shows up more in your consciousness through all the calamities, that's fantastic. But at least appreciate that Krishna consciousness has given you the tools to deal with these situations, to be able to accept things that maybe ordinary people couldn't accept. And the last point is, if we can't accept these things, then what is our claim to being a devotee? What is our claim to believing in Krishna? Okay, we believe in Krishna, but do we believe at that moment it's either his will or he will help us through? Sometimes not.